Did announce details of the UIF's new national disaster benefit. The benefit is aimed at paying workers who stand to lose their income because of business closures to fight the spread of the coronavirus in the coming weeks.
Many workers are now preparing to stay at home over the next 3 weeks as part of the national lockdown to limit the spread of the coronavirus. But for many others, it will be work as usual.
Remember that a large cohort of the workers will remain at work in the emergency services. You're talking about medical, security, and some industries, and what has been called the essential services. You're talking the police, the firefighters. You're also talking about those who are dealing with water supply, the sewage and sanitation. You're talking about the ICT, data centers, the fiber ones. You're also talking about those who are dealing with the generation, transmission, and the distribution of electricity, because these are called essential services, because if interrupted, this would endanger life.
For those who happen to contract the coronavirus while on duty, the Department of Labour's Compensation Fund will cover their medical expenses. And if they don't make it, their dependents can claim compensation from the fund.
For those who fall ill as a result of work, they will be covered by the Compensation Fund or the Compensation Act.
Many of the workers who do not fall under essential services will be forced to stay home with no pay. The government says not to worry, they are going to get paid from the Unemployment Insurance Fund.
Tomorrow, we'll be making detailed announcement, including how this is going to be administered. Remember that we're talking about millions of workers who are going to be claiming from the UIF.
Minister Ngwese says government is still working out how unregistered workers who don't contribute to the UIF and neither to their employers can be accommodated. SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, following President Cyril Ramaphosa's announcement of a countrywide lockdown, certain businesses will be allowed to operate. And you'll remember earlier in the week we reported that Standard Bank announced a payment holiday for students and small business loans that are all up to date from the 1st of April to the 30th of June this year, and other banks followed suit as well. And of course, this emerged amid growing calls for consumer reprieve as the world grapples with the spread of COVID-19. So how can businesses mitigate the financial impacts of the virus? We joined on the line by Rais Khan, who is the Executive Director of Sintolok Strategic Consultants, so that he can unpack this for us. Thank you very much for joining us on our program.
Hi, good afternoon. How are you?
Well, I'm doing great, sir. Just to find out from you, basically, when somebody's in business right now, with the interventions that have been announced by government, there could be a reprieve from some businesses that are formal. But then here, talking formal or informal business, how must one prepare to survive and sustain the business? I think that we got cut off when we were still just trying to get into it. Well, we are trying to get in touch with Mr. Rais Khan, who is the Executive Director of Sintolok Strategic Consultants. And of course, we will try to get in touch with him in a moment. But in the meantime, with the South African economy already in recession and expected to contract by as much as up to 3% in 2020, some analysts say the government should consider a stimulus package. And this will cushion the economy against the effects of a worsening spread of the COVID-19, which currently stands at over 500 and expected to increase. Other countries such as the US and the UK have already put in place stimulus packages, and a stimulus package is a number of incentives and tax rebates offered by a government to boost spending in a bid to pull a country out of a recession or to prevent an economic slowdown.
Absa Corporate and Investment Banking says the impact of COVID-19 on the economy will be devastating. It says the decision to shut down the country for 21 days will hurt productivity in key sectors such as mining and manufacturing. Economist Maishusla says while government measures announced on Monday are plentiful, but they are not enough.
Businesses are not going to be able to get enough because the government doesn't have enough funds. Already there are many limits in place as to the size of the business, that it shouldn't have been in trouble beforehand. All these sort of things are there, and it's very difficult to see how informal business is going to be able to survive in these times. It will be really a matter for most businesses, I think, of just keeping their heads down, doing what they need to do, and trying to survive. I think
the measures announced amount to nearly 14 billion rands. This is over and above other measures applied. Countries such as the United States, the United Kingdom and New Zealand have put in place stimulus packages.
The use of the UIF, it was something that was negotiated before this decision around the lockdown. It was a labour initiative. It was not a government initiative. So quite frankly, government has not really come with anything of substance to the table except 100 million rands from National Treasury. And I think that's such a tragedy.
But Treasury says there is enough money to provide the government fiscal room to respond to critical interventions related to the shutdown. This, it says, will be done by reprioritising government budget.
The money is there, the money is in the budget, the money is in the system. It's through reprioritization. You heard the Minister of Tourism saying that they'll make 200 million available. This is from existing monies and resources where we are approving virements from other programs to specific COVID-19 related programs. And that's working. Same with the 150 million rand that Minister Patel was talking about of seed funding for the Solidarity Fund. He did indicate that we'll be putting 100 million from Treasury. Effectively, it's again looking at budgets, slicing off some budgets that are clearly not going to be spent. I can tell you now as an example, if you look at what's going to happen on the travel budgets across the departments, in national departments we have about, on average, on a monthly basis, spend about 280 million. That 280 million won't be spent for domestic and international travel. So effectively, that means that money will have to be reprioritized. So that 100 million, for instance, is coming from such programs. And as he said, the 50 million is coming from the lottery. So there is money in the system currently that's not going to be, and we are reprioritizing to specific COVID-19 programs.
Against a possible credit downgrade by Moody's, analysts say government's options could be limited unless additional stimulus measures are introduced. They are predicting that the central bank may have to further cut interest rates, with some saying by as much as 50 basis points. This is in addition to the 100 basis points announced last week.
the problem for South Africa at the moment is we hope it's only 21 days lockdown. But if it's more than 21 days of a lockdown, it's really going to make the situation even more severe. It's going to be further loss of GDP, further loss of jobs and everything. And we know that there is a lot of help coming, but it really cannot be enough.
We're talking about shutting down 2/3 of the economy, a GDP of 5.2 trillion, over one quarter, maybe 2 quarters. And the government in return gives us a 2 billion rand kitty, a charity fund, to counter the impact of that. I think it's astounding. And we should be actually having a much larger monetary and fiscal stimulus.
Meanwhile, the United States Senate is expected to continue with negotiations on a ballooning economic stimulus package. This is after hitting a roadblock on Sunday when Democrats blocked the procedural vote to advance the legislation. The package could be as large as $2 trillion. It is expected to provide some buffering to industries and sectors hardest hit by the outbreak, particularly airlines, hotels and small businesses in general. Diabosito, SABC News, Johannesburg.